and welcome to the Sage 50 Cloud Pastel Accounting topic webinar. Guys, today what we're going to be talking about is we are going to be talking about the General Settings tax tab. So the next time in 2 weeks when we are back for a webinar, I will do Tax Manager. But today we're going to talk about the General Settings. This is because it was one, asked for, and two, often people will ask, especially, how do I get rid of these 14% VAT types? So guys, we're going to go through it. Now, where you find that is you go to Setup, Tax, and General Settings, and this will open up the General Settings. So these settings need to be set up before Tax Manager can work. And basically you have your parameters tab, your percentages tab, your box name, and your box layout. Now guys, I'm going to very briefly in this webinar explain box name and box layout, but in order to set this up correctly, you do need a tax practitioner. We are not here to customize this for you, unfortunately, as support. So I cannot tell you, oh, this is what you use, this is how you combine the boxes, this is what the percentage of the tax type should be. Especially with this side of things, this is something that you need to know how to set up, or you need a tax practitioner to assist you. So we're mostly going to be working on the parameters and the percentages. Now with the parameters, you'll see that you've got your processing method. It asks you what tax system you're using, and you have 3 tax systems you can use. You can either not use tax because you don't, SARS has said it's fine, you don't need to use tax, or you are exempt from tax. So you can set it to do not use tax. Normal VAT, GST, sales tax, or payment cash-based VAT. So basically what happens is that you choose one of these options. Generally, SARS will advise you which option if you are eligible for tax or VAT, and you will then choose one of these. The difference between normal VAT and payment cash-based VAT is that the VAT is only worked out with the payment cash-based VAT at the time of payment or receipt, whereas normal VAT is as you process through the system. This is the most common method that people select, other than no VAT. If you select normal VAT, you'll see that you have a tax control account, but the tax provision account will be grayed out. The tax provision account becomes available if you're using payment or cash-based VAT. And basically, as you process, it will put the tax in the provision account. And when you receive payments, that's when it will move it to the VAT control account. So it will sit here as you process your invoices on your supplier and your customer side. And only when you have made payments or received payment will it move it to your tax control account. So that option is not available on normal VAT. It puts everything in the tax control account. Then guys, if we look at our early terms, what are early terms? Either our suppliers give us terms and they'll say, listen here, if you pay us within 7 days from the date of the invoice, we'll give you a 2% discount every time. That is an incentive to pay them early payment terms. And you can then say it does not affect invoice value, or VAT-free and therefore changes the invoice value. Those are your 2 options. And then default entry method, do you want it to be exclusive or inclusive? So guys, the parameters are just you setting up the type of VAT system you're going to use, how the early terms affect your invoices, and your entry method. Is it exclusive or inclusive? Now guys, bear in mind that this is set up in so many different places that, in all honesty, certain settings overwrite others. So for example, on your customers, you choose whether they are inclusive or exclusive. On inventory, you choose whether you input inclusive or exclusive. And that actually overwrites this. This is just for tax, but in all honesty, the customer, the supplier, and the inventory actually overwrite this method. This is just a default, and it will look at what you've said on your customer account, what you've said in your supply account, or what you've said on inventory, and it will then input it in that way. Then guys, we look at the percentages, and this is where the question came in, where people are like, how do I get rid of all of this 14%? You know, this happened in 2018. Surely by now we can get rid of this. Yes and no. So guys, if you start a brand new company and nothing is grayed out, then yeah, technically you could change all of this to 15%, make sure that your end dates are set up correctly, and you can change everything because you're probably not ever going to use 14% VAT again. The reason that this was left here is when we transitioned from 14 to 15% VAT, what happened is people had to do reversals and they had to do extra transactions during that transition because it happened in 2018, but it happened in April. So a lot of people were already in the new financial year. So some transactions were 14%, some were 15%. And in order for your tax to be correct, we couldn't just delete the 14% tax at all because people had used these tax types. And for historical purposes, they were there. The reason that you still can't change that standard rated if it is grayed out is because you have historical transactions that used 14% VAT. So then you either need to start a new company where you have no history, and then you could change these, or guys, you can just stick to these options. Now, again, I can't explain to you why our dev team did this jump, because any of you who have attended my webinars know that I will tell you, please don't do this. It makes no sense, but it hasn't seemed to cause a problem at all, even though you have this difference here. So guys, that is ultimately why historically you have data that used 14%. And the reason that we didn't get rid of it in 2018 is because there was that mix and people still had to do credit notes with 14% because in March, they used 14%. You can't suddenly credit something with 15% when you used 14. So at this point in 2022, if you can't change that, if you can't delete them, if you can't alter them, you have transactions that historically still have 14% VAT on them. That is why you can start a new company and you can take on balances. Honestly, guys, best time to do that though is at the end of your financial year when your auditors have given you your trial balance. That is the best time to start a new company and take on balances. You can do it at any point, but it is best to do at the end of a financial year when you're starting the new financial year. Now, guys, here we can see that we've got number, description, tax percentage, start, and end. Now, this is all very important, especially this end column. Now, you can give any description that you want for a specific tax type. You may not be in South Africa. You may need to create your own tax type, so you may have a difference. Standard rate 20%, for example. You come in 20%, and then you can select your start date. Now, guys, the 1st of the 1st, 1980 is fine. This has always been used from here. However, if you're scared people will backdate transactions where this hasn't been used, for example, again, with the 15%, you can see that it only started on the 1st of the 4th, 2018. And the reason for that was so that people didn't accidentally use 15% before it was legal to do so. So you can change that here. The end date, guys, is really, really important. Okay, cool. I suppose. Sorry guys, a comment that was made is that 15% VAT started at 15, so fair, and that made sense for IT and accountants. I suppose it's just a number list, but again, it's the human brain. It's how we go and put things in boxes. Just again, this is a program. You don't need to box it. The system filters things accordingly. That's the only point I'm trying to make in terms of programming. Sometimes when you have those breaks, especially in inventory in groups, it breaks the system. Please don't do it. Don't skip lines. So that's why I'm like, for those of you who saw that, you were probably like, they skipped lines. Joanne's going to freak out, because generally I tell you, please don't do that. It hasn't made any issues because no one really uses the top part anyway. They only really use this part. But irrespective of that, it does make sense. I understand what you're saying. My point is it's unnecessary because you're grouping it where the system, the actual program itself, doesn't need you to group it. It's making sense to you to group it. But I do get the point. You know that it's 15, so you just type in 15. Irrespective, guys, you can add it here. Now, as I said, the start date is important if legally, like with the 14 to 15% VAT, you legally could only start using 15% VAT from the 1st of April 2018. That is where the start date is very important. If there has been a legislature change and you have a change like we had in South Africa where we went from 14 to 15%, or maybe by some miracle you're going down and they're charging you less VAT, you would put the start date to stop people from using that tax in the wrong period with the wrong dates. That's where you would enter your start date. Now, guys, the end date is also important, because if the tax type expires, you will be told that the tax type is no longer valid for the period. So if, again, we go to 14%, we can see we've ended this on the 31st of the 3rd, 2018. The reason for that is legally, you could no longer use 14% VAT. So if you tried to process on the 1st of April with 14% VAT, tax type 1, you would have been told you can't do this. It's no longer a valid tax type. So that's where the start and end become really important. But guys, it's very simple to add a new tax type. That's how you add it. And you give it a name and you enter the percentage, you enter your start and end dates as they are applicable, and you move forward. Then guys, as I said, the box name, this is just how you are setting up your box layout. So you would need to set out your box layout first. Here you have all of your entry types. Your entry types go down the page, and your tax types go across the page. And for every entry type, you need to come in and state what this is. So is it input VAT? If we're looking at payments, is that input VAT? Is it export VAT? Is it output VAT? What is this? But you have to do this for every single tax type. So you need to come through, have a look at it, and set it up. Now, guys, obviously, if we're just using the 15% and you've used the setup assistance, it will be from column 14 all the way to 21. But make sure that all the tax types that you use have been set up. And you will set them up according to that tax type. But you need to know what that tax type is. Is it exempt? Is it, accommodation? That type of thing. And you need to do this for every single entry type. This is where you can customize it. So on occasion, we'll have people who come through and go, the tax type report is putting my return and debit as output tax. It's not input tax. Or now, guys, there is a tick that fixes that, where you go set sales and credits against purchases, and it will move it, but that only works for documents. If you do journals, it does not do that. So the way that Pastel works in terms of tax is any tax that has a credit, that is on the credit side, is seen as output VAT. Any tax that is a debit, so it's on the debit side when you post that VAT, is seen as input. So if it's debit VAT, it's input. If it's credit VAT, it's output. And if you do a return and debit, or if you do a debit to your supplier, so you're altering something for the supplier, the tax becomes a credit if tax is used. If it is credit VAT, it's seen as output. It's just how the system works. So with journals, that's why on occasion it does that. The amount that you owe SARS should not alter. It's just where in the system it's putting those transactions. So we do have people who are like, look, it's doing this. That is where you need to set up your box layout, where you can literally tell it, hey, whether you are a debit or a credit, I want you to be input tax. General journal, whether you're a debit or a credit, I want you to be this. That type of thing, guys. So on your supplier side, obviously for a general journal, you would not do that. But for example, on your sales and your sales credits and that type of thing, we can see here sales, whether it's a debit or a credit, this is set up as standard rated output tax. Okay, thank you for the comment. I think that is what I said with 2018, but cool. Not sure if I'm understanding the comment, but thank you for that. Sorry guys, I'm just checking. Morning, sorry for asking. Okay, I will answer your question at the end. Well, I'll try to assist you at the end. We do have an email, we do have a video with regards on YouTube if the email isn't working that you can go see with all the solutions to them not being able to email. But so guys, this is where a box layout can be more useful. But again, you need to understand that, you need to understand the different tax types, and you need to understand how those tax types work. Now, guys, as you can see, 14 to 21, 14 is still 14% VAT, but it's temporary VAT. So again, that was the situation where you may have processed in March of 2018, and in April, you needed to do a credit note or a return and debit. The VAT that was used was 14% VAT. So you still need to credit or return and debit with 14% VAT. So that's why the 14% temporary is still there. In case there are transactions that you processed 14% VAT and you need to process reversals and they need to use 14% VAT. In 2022, I doubt that's still a thing, but if it is, you do still have that 14% temporary VAT. So guys, that is how the box works. So you've got your entry types, you've got all your different tax types. If you need to know which tax types are which, you come to percentages. You find the lines, because that's what it's referring to as tax type. The line becomes a tax type. So temporary VAT would be tax type 14, tax type 15, tax type 16. If you can't remember what they are, you can write them down here. Then you can go to your box layout. You can set it up. Then your box names. This is where, when you are submitting to SARS, you wanted to show. So you wanted to show standard rated output. How do you want to use it? Do you want to use it in box layout, combine other boxes, or percentage of the tax type? Now, guys, when it comes to here, I can't exactly explain how to set this up. I can explain what it means. Use in box layout means that it's going to use standard rated output in the box layout. But here we can see combine in box. So what it's doing, total supply is saying combine 6 and 7 to give you a total. So you're saying what to use, and then you can combine them. Again here, total output, and it's telling you what boxes to combine to say this is the total output. And that's how you do it, guys. You basically sit here and you enter, okay, this is how I want it to work. This is what I wanted to include. And then based on what I wanted to include, what do I want it to do from there? How do I want to combine these boxes? How do I want it to tell me my totals? Generally, a tax practitioner can help you with this. And guys, the thing with the box names and the box layout specifically is this can be very customizable to you, to your setup, to your needs, to what your business needs. Whereas the tax type report is a generic standard report based on the parameters that you've set up. Now, obviously, the parameters still apply to the box layout. If you've set the parameters to do not use tax, it's not going to generate any reports for you because you've said do not use tax. So nothing is posting to the VAT control or the tax provision account anyway. There is no anything. Not that you could set it up anyway, but if you don't use tax, none of this is applicable. So your percentages, guys, you can put whatever descriptions make sense to you. You do not need to use these descriptions. You can change them. If the tax is grayed out, so you cannot click in the tax percentage box, it's grayed out, like that's standard rated, or apparently I haven't used my 15% VAT in this company, but 15% VAT. In that way, guys, you can't change it. That's where you would need to select a new tax type. So that is this setting. Then, guys, if you do create a new tax type, you may wish to go and change the defaults, because if we look at the defaults, for example, process cash books or process journals, because journals and cash books work similarly, this is where you may accidentally use 00 tax or 01 tax. Guys, in the settings, you will see default tax type, and you can set this to always use 15%. Now, that doesn't mean that it will always do it. This is just a default tax type. But what it means is that you won't inadvertently use 00, which is normally the tax type that is set as default. Now, if you set this on your journals and your cash books, this will be overwritten by what you set up on your customers, suppliers, and inventory. So if I go into my customer account, you can see that on processing, I can either force a tax type to 15%. Now, if you force a tax type, you cannot change that tax type, period. It's forced, it's always 15%. So you can either say no tax default, which means it will use whatever the journal or the cash book has set up, default tax type, or forced tax type. And you can then set it accordingly. Guys, a default tax type, while it will default to 15%, you will be able to change it. So if, for example, you are processing the lines and you see, oh, wait, this is exempt second-hand or export second-hand goods or whatever where's exempt? Sorry, guys, there should be one. Exempt non-supply. You can go and change that on your lines. Just because it's set to 15 does not mean you can't change it. The only time you cannot change it is if it's forced. If it's forced, you can't change it. But your customers and your suppliers overwrite anything else. If, however, you say no tax default on the customers and the suppliers, and you are processing invoices, that is where, if you are using inventory items, the item file will default. So your customers overwrite your item files, but your item lines will default to 15%. So again, guys, if you do need to change this, this is where you will come to change it. Now in Partner, you can use something called the tax type adjustment wizard. Those of you in Express, which I'm using, you would have to export your customer master, your supplier master, your inventory master, change the tax type default method and setting, import it back to have those changed. So that is a tip for Express. On Partner though, guys, you can just follow the wizard and make the changes accordingly. But customers and suppliers overwrite inventory. Inventory will be used if you are processing documents using physical or service items. If you use general ledger, the general ledger account settings will be used on documents. Now, guys, I'm specifying this specifically because here you can see no tax default again. You can set up your GLs to use a default tax type or a forced tax type. But the reason that I'm making the difference between documents and journals and cash books is because documents will use the general ledger if you're using GL code or inventory settings. If you have set up your customers and suppliers to have a default or a forced tax type, it will use the customer or the supplier settings on everything, journals and documents. If, however, the customer and supplier is set to no tax type default, it will use the general ledger or the inventory on documents, and it will use the journal and the cash book settings on journals and cash books. Does that make sense? So that's where your tax ties in and where you need to set up your tax per general ledger account, per inventory item, per customer, per supplier. If you want to, you can go and set up your defaults for your journals and your cash books. And guys, I strongly advise that you do, because a lot of the times when people phone in and they tell us, hey, half my transactions aren't showing on my tax reports, it's because no default was set up. And for example, on the cash book, you had the default set up to 00. Now guys, 00 tax is not included on your tax report. This is completely excluded. Next time, in 2 weeks' time, guys, so on the, I could be wrong, I think that it's actually on the 13th. So sorry guys, it's in like 3 weeks' time, on the 13th of July. I stand corrected if I'm wrong. On the 13th of July, I'm going to take you through tax manager settings. So we're actually going to go through these settings, and then we're going to do a deep dive into tax manager, how tax manager works, and what reports you can view. Guys, I did the general settings first to make sure that your systems are all set up correctly. If however any of you are interested, I have run an overview on tax manager before, and that is available on our YouTube channel. So guys, again, if you want to go and find our videos, you can go into YouTube, type in Sage Customer Support and Training. You're going to see that it is the green new Sage logo on a black background. You're going to click on that. And then guys, what you're going to do is you're going to click on playlists. In playlists, you're going to find Africa and Middle East. In Sage Africa and Middle East, you're going to click the button once and you will find Sage 50 Cloud Pastel. Please click on View Full Playlist. Guys, if you click on Play All, it's going to start randomly playing the videos. From here, you can scroll through the list to find what you are looking for. Now, guys, we do have 214 videos to date. That will increase by Friday. But basically what you're looking for is you're looking here. Alternatively, you can type in, sorry guys, can type in tax manager, and see what comes up. I would strongly advise, if you are going to search though, you go Sage 50 Cloud Pastel, and then guys, you can do tax manager. So hopefully what will come up is how to set up and use tax manager, and you can set that up accordingly. And you can watch that if you obviously are like, look, Joe, I can't wait 3 weeks. There we go. I want to look at that. That is there. For the person who said that they were having email issues, videos are here. How can I resolve emailing issues for Sage Pastel Accounting? There is this video, and there is a webinar that was also run where we did show you how to resolve those. So you can watch those two videos if you want. Hopefully that will resolve your problem. There are a lot of solutions to not being able to email from Sage, so I do suggest that you watch both. There is also the KB article. So guys, please remember that we have a really nice knowledge base, sagekb.com. Please remember, before you type in what you're searching for, to please select your product. So Sage 50 Pastel, and then you can type in email or email error, and you can look through the list. Generally, the one that you're looking for is either there's no default mail set up. And guys, this is basically a step-by-step guide on all the different solutions you can try. I would open this in conjunction with that video just because it gives you all the steps, and hopefully that will assist. So I'm going to put the link to the KB article here. Okay, so guys, if there are any questions, please use the question icon and let me know. I think that I did answer the ones of the other people that asked. But guys, I've got another question. Is there a limitation on the number of users for Sage 50 Pastel Partner? Not entirely. However, please bear in mind that Sage 50 Cloud Pastel, whether partner or express, is for small business. Guys, if you are doing thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions in a month, and I'm not talking 1,000 or 2,000, we're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of transactions, you shouldn't be on Pastel. You should be on medium segment. What's going to happen is that the system, pervasive is like access, if I can put it that way. You've got SQL, then you've got the baby version of SQL, which is pervasive. That is the database that Pastel uses. It's why Pastel is not as expensive as Evolution or Intact. But if you are going to be doing tens of thousands of transactions in a month, if you are going to be having over 30 users, I would cap partner at 30 users. And even then, I think that you are pushing it. I would say you need to start looking in the medium segment. I would look at Intact over Evolution, just because Intact is completely cloud and it is very customizable to your business. Guys, I'm currently doing the Intact training. I've gone through a lot of it. And guys, when I tell you it is customizable on a whole nother level. Like, there are things that Intact can do that makes partner look ridiculous. And there are parts of the system that just work seamlessly. So while there aren't exactly limitations, you do need to understand that Pastel, whether express or partner, is for small business. Yes, obviously, as you move into the medium segment, those systems become more costly. But again, you are paying for an infrastructure and an accounting system that can actually work for you. You do not want to be phoning us. And guys, we don't want you to be phoning us every day going, hey, I'm struggling with this. I've got this type of corruption. My system's falling over. I've got missing lines, because the system just cannot actually deal with the bulk of the information that you're pushing through it. So you do need to bear that in mind. there are limitations. Its database is not as robust as SQL, which would be Evolution. But honestly, if you're moving into the medium segment, I would strongly advise that you look at Intact. Intact is a global product. It's very customizable, and it's really, really awesome. So guys, that being said, I would say that while there isn't a set limitation, if you're going over 30 users, you definitely should be in the medium segment. That for me is pushing it. I kind of feel when you're going to 15 users or so, you're probably already starting to push it. You may need to start having those conversations about moving to medium and about actually investing in a more robust accounting system to make sure that you have the oversight you need to keep growing your system. Guys, that being said, are there any other questions? Is there any other advice that you would like? Is there any other information that you require from me? Please let me know. Is there anything else that you need me to explain in more details? If not, that is it for this session. As I said, it was going to be a pretty quick bite-sized session. I do like having these bite-sized sessions that aren't hours and hours and hours. I feel that they work for you guys. So we do have a few of those spread out. We do try to do 30 minutes to an hour. But guys, sometimes that does get a little bit more. So guys, that would be it for this session. If you don't have any other questions, you're welcome to log out. Guys, you will get the recording as well as hopefully your certificate tomorrow at around 10:30, 11, 12-ish. It should send it to you automatically. If it doesn't, please let me know. Guys, with the certificates, if you do not get your certificate, there is nothing I can do to go in to get that certificate. The only thing I can do is send an email to confirm that you did attend the session. I can advise how long the session was and what the topic was. And if you want to forward that to someone, you absolutely can do that. But I don't have access to the certificates at all. If you didn't enter your correct name or your details, I also have no access to go in and change that, unfortunately. I have logged this with GoToWebinar and advised them that maybe they need to make that feature available, because there are people who don't get their certificates who need them, or where there's spelling errors and they just want that stuff changed. So guys, I am working with them, but at this point, I don't have a solution yet. Otherwise, I hope you all have an amazing day, a wonderful weekend. Guys, it's pay weekend. Thank goodness. We'll all have a bit of money for about 5 minutes until debit orders come off. But everyone feels happy on pay weekend. So have a wonderful weekend. Anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. I'll be available for a few more minutes. If there are no questions, guys, I will end the session, but I will let you know. Otherwise, those of you who are happy, guys, you're welcome to log out. And again, enjoy the day and have a wonderful week and weekend. Ciao, ciao.